Hello, and welcome to Stories from the View, a podcast from the Pleasant View Senior Center in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. On this podcast, we invite East Longmeadow residents to tell us stories about their lives and events. And today's guest is Tony Markowski from East Longmeadow, and your moderator is Ed Fitzgerald, and here's Ed.
Thanks, Eric. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Ed.
Good to we've had an opportunity to chat a little bit here, and you've I see that you're active in the community, you're active in the church. We started to talk about your professional life, and then we decided to turn on the mic and start recording this. But I'd like to start at the beginning. I mean, when did you first arrive in East Longmeadow?
I arrived in East Longmeadow in 1976. Okay, my wife and I were looking for a home. She was a teacher in Springfield. I worked down in East Hartford, and we wanted something that would be advantageous to both of us for commuting. And the home we found, the home we finally landed on, was one that we both liked and was somewhere in between. So we wound up here in East Longmeadow. I'm originally from Suffield, Connecticut, and that's where I'm the only one in my family who hadn't gone into farming. They were all farmers of it back there in Suffield. But
so what did you do in Hartford?
I worked for what started out as United Aircraft and then became United Technologies, and I worked in their research and development organization. I worked in United Technologies Research Center. I spent about 40 years with UTC, and I went from being an electronics technician to an optical technician to procurement, which they decided they wanted someone. I was going to school at the time for engineering, and they wanted someone in procurement who could talk to engineers. As I said, we were a research facility, so we didn't produce a product. And whenever we purchased something, we were purchasing one at a time to fill a contract, to do an experiment, to do a paper, or improve a product, or solve a problem with a product. Mm-hmm. So engineers would want all kinds of things, and you had to have someone who would understand what they wanted and why they needed that and what that was. So I got selected to do that, and like I say, I spent about 30 years in purchasing.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Sounds very interesting.
It was. The work is very interesting. The people were more interesting because the facility where I worked, when I retired, we had about 900 employees. Of the 900, at least 600 had at least one PhD. We had more PhDs than the universities.
Wow.
Okay. My senior director had 2 PhDs, an MBA, and played lead guitar in a rock band.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And that's all the research.
This is research. Yeah, he was the director of research. I did work with one scientist who was internationally known in the field of non-destructive testing, and he was working on one of the spacecraft disasters,
Shuttle.
a shuttle, and it wasn't a shuttle, it was a launch from Vandenberg that blew up right after launch. And he was trying to determine what happened. And as I said, I did some traveling with him to various locations and got to know him pretty well. And he, again, PhD, National Academy of Sciences, advisor to the President of the United States, and soloist in the Hartford Chorale.
Wow.
Yeah, he sang solos in the Messiah each Christmas time at the Hartford Chorale in the Bushnell. So very interesting people we worked with. Multifaceted, exciting place to work. I was not one of the PhDs.
So this is far from farming.
Oh, yes.
That farming life that you talked about.
Yeah. Well, I'll start from the beginning in that my father's oldest brother emigrated here to this country from Poland before World War I. We don't know the exact year. No one remembers. And after he got here and got settled, he brought over each of his siblings. My father was able to come over. He sponsored my father to come over in 1930. My father left my mother and 3 children in Poland. And it took 8 years from that point to bring the rest of the family over. So they had a family in Poland, and then they started another family here. Okay, I and my brother Edward were born here. I'm the youngest of 5. Now, and Edward is the big farmer, but all of my brothers had farms in Suffield and in that area. So that's where we came from. In fact, I keep saying English for me is a second language because my parents never really spoke English. They always spoke Polish. My mother didn't, and my father died very young. So my mother at 46 was left with 5 kids, and I was 4 years old when that happened. So it was a tough life for her, but we did well. They did well. Okay.
Wow. So your involvement in the community while you were working, you probably were
Another
pretty
story.
busy.
I was offered an early retirement at age 55, and I didn't take it because I hadn't prepared for retirement. So I made it my objective to get myself ready for retirement, and I started to delve into things that I thought I might like to do during retirement. And that led me to, and we had belonged to St. Michael's here almost since we moved to town. So I started to get involved with the Knights of Columbus, the St. Vincent de Paul, and things like that. And what I learned was I like to cook. I like to cook, but only for large groups. During retirement, we cook at 2 soup kitchens in Springfield. I cook for the KFC. I've gotten involved with Rose Stella and the youth groups at St. Michael's, and we cook drive-through dinners where the kids do that.
I've eaten some of your food. It's very good.
Well, as far as the drive-through dinners, those are prepared by our high school youth group. Okay, I'm there and maybe a couple of other adults to help guide them, but we had them do all the prep work. They come in the day before to do the prep work, and then the day of, and plate the meals and cook the food and distribute it out. So, and that's one thing I really like is working with the youth. The youth in East Longmeadow is amazing. They really are. I get choked up talking about it. No, Rose Stella is a wonder to our parish.
I know Rose.
She started the youth group for the middle school. And as the first group of middle schoolers aged out and went to high school, they wanted to continue. So they started a youth group for the high schoolers. And these kids were going down to a facility in Springfield to help, what would you call them, unwed teenage mothers, with give them a break to babysit with them and whatnot. And they came to the realization that they had no fixtures down there. They didn't have cribs for the infants. So they decided to do a fundraiser of some sort, and that's when Rose got a hold of me, and we started the drive-through dinners. And the first time we did a drive-through dinner with this youth group, they raised enough money to buy 4 cribs for the facility. So they continued on, and they bought cribs, they bought air conditioners for the place, various things, and it just expanded. It's a wonderful experience dealing with the youth of this town.
So once you retired, then you got involved in these.
I did.
This activity.
I started this before retirement, and I was actually taking vacation time, half a day of vacation time at a time, to be involved with some of these things. And I found out that, life. I mean, work was interfering with my life. There were more things to do than go to East Hartford each day and help this big corporation. Yes. So I decided to pull the trigger on my own, retired, and have not regretted a day of it.
That's wonderful.
That's wonderful. Going on 20 years now. Okay.
So now, as far as town activities, voting, you're involved in the.
Yes, again, the same thing. We get the annual census, and the bottom line on the annual census, so there's a block that says, would you be willing to help in voting? So I checked that off, and the next thing I know, Tom Florence is giving me a call, and I got involved with voting and just working the polls as a clerk, and then a poll worker, because you got to watch the words here. Then I was asked to be clerk and then warden, and now I'm on the board of registrars. So I get involved with the Jeannie, the town clerk, regularly, and the other members of the boards, and work the elections.
Nice.
But yeah, it's the volunteer work that keeps me going.
Now, you mentioned Knights of Columbus.
Yes. Yep. There again, Charlie Howell, who is gone now, he got me involved with the Knights of Columbus because he heard that I was decent on a grill, and we started doing chicken barbecues way back when. And I do the pasta suppers for them, and they do a golf tournament annually, and I do the dinner for the golf tournament. So everything revolves around food.
Well, that sounds good to me. Why not?
So, as I said, and great bunch of guys that I work with and deal with, and we do charitable things, helping people out, but also with St. Vincent de Paul, same thing. With the St. Vincent de Paul actually funds the ingredients for the meals we do at the soup kitchens, because we do a meal at Friends of the Homeless on Worthington Street, and we do a meal at through Loaves and Fishes at the South Congregational Church on Maple Street in Springfield. And we have teams of people who do that, and we had those up. So we go out and buy the ingredients, bring them down, prepare the meals, serve the meals, and see some really grateful people who just need some help.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember during the pandemic, you did drive-throughs at the Knights, right? For
Yeah.
pasta dinners? or
We did,
something?
yeah, we did some, because we couldn't have people in the facility. So we had meals to go. But
Nice.
I don't know where else to go here.
Yeah. Well, what is it that you would like? Is there anything in particular you'd like to talk about? Any experiences, other experiences that you've had here in town? And
We lived in town for probably 25 years before I started to get involved. And because of work and whatnot, I felt like I was simply a commuter from here. Okay? And it's been then since I got involved with these volunteer things. But I was going to say, has nothing to do with East Town of East Long Meadow, but my one experience that I always refer to is I was in the Air Force for 4 years, right after high school. And my last station was in Selma, Alabama, which has historical significance. And I was there to witness Martin Luther King's march from Selma to Montgomery.
wow, yeah, that's pretty special.
It was. And what was really special was not the march itself to start with, but the prelude to it, in that when they tried to have the march initially and were forced back by the Alabama State Troopers. Well, I said Alabama, didn't I? It is. Selma, Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay. I get confused sometimes. But as it happened, I was having pizza in a restaurant across the river from the downtown area of Selma, Alabama. And this particular restaurant had a second floor that was open so you could dine outside. It was undercover. And I'm sitting there with some of the guys and see these state police cars coming down road. And the highway there is like Riverdale Street in West Springfield, where it's businesses on both sides, but it's 2 lanes each way with a median, but unlimited access to the roads. There were businesses. And they're coming down both sides and saying, what's going on? What's going on? And then the marchers start to come over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And the Edmund Pettus Bridge is very crowned, so that you didn't see them when they started. You didn't see them until they got to the top of the crown. And that's when the police turned loose the dogs and all the things that you see on the news about turning the marchers back, and the real tragedy that it was, okay? And it wasn't until about a week later that the actual march happened. And to have the march, what happened was obviously the federal marshals brought in MPs from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, to guard the marchers as they closed down one half of this 4-lane highway for the marchers to march down. And I always thought to myself, thought to myself, why did they bring in MPs from Kentucky when you've got this Air Force base sitting right here? And the answer came to me later on. When the march was over, the airmen in the base still had to live here. And there's a lot of hard feelings. And if you were seen doing something that the local people didn't appreciate, you could have had a very hard time.
Yeah,
so
I can understand.
Somebody thought well about that and got that done.
So this came as a surprise to you. You didn't know anything was, you're just having your pizza?
Yeah.
And
I was a 22-year-old GI. I was not involved with politics or news or anything. I mean, I was worried about getting gas for the car.
Wow. That's
so
amazing.
I didn't know, and that was a total. I had no idea what was going on.
So what happened? Like after it ended? I mean, did you just
after which end?
Well, yeah, I guess. Well, what with the conflict? I mean, did you feel at risk? I mean, were you able to get out go back?
Oh yeah. The
okay.
thing is, again, young and stupid. Because when the actual march was going on,
right,
it affected us very little in that it was traffic. Okay, the problem with the highway as far as them closing one side of it. But after the marchers had passed where the Air Force Base was, which was 4 or 5 miles outside of town, it didn't affect us at all, other than support of the MPs from Fort Campbell. And but after the march was over, it didn't affect me, but it affected some of the other, some of the black airmen. Okay, it affected them dramatically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you could imagine.
Being from Suffield, Suffield had a African American community, because there's a section of town that was all African American black people's homes, and I can only surmise that these were the families of what used to be, if you will, the service staff to the very wealthy in Suffield, because Suffield was a very wealthy community back in the early 1900s. Okay, and they had staff. But I went to school with everyone. Okay, there were black kids in my class, and they were treated, in my estimation, no different than anyone else. I mean, you had some that were really intelligent and, if you will, nerds. You had some that were superstars in sports, and you had average students. And they actually lived on the same street where I grew up. Okay, but it was just one section. So I had not experienced, if you will, the segregation prior to going to to Selma. I was obviously went to basic in Lackland. I went to tech school in Biloxi, Mississippi, but I was very much isolated to the base. Okay, I didn't have a lot of connection with the town around. But in Selma, I was now in my last years of the 4 years of service. I had my own car down there. I got out to go around and visit. And I was very much cautioned about going to certain places. And when I had a airman in the car with me who was black, I didn't go certain places. And
Wow.
that was very strong. Okay, people said things like, "Don't go there if you want to live." Okay, so there was a lot of things going on
Wow.
in the early '60s in the Deep South that were eye-opening.
Wow.
And I think they affected me in my life afterwards, as far as how I feel about other people. I mean, I feel very strongly that people are people regardless of their ethnic or racial background. So I try and get along with everyone.
Wow.
Okay.
So did you, where did you go from there? From Selma? Did you?
After the Air Force, I came back to Suffield and lived at home for a while. And that's when I started my work at Pratt & Whitney. And like I said, I was at Pratt for about 5 years because I went through their apprenticeship program for electronics. And the company treated me very well, okay? Because I never missed a day of work there as far as being laid off or anything like that.
Wow.
And when I came and I transferred over to the research center, it was great. It was
So when you started there, you started in what position? What were you?
when I started there, okay, I started as an apprentice in the electronics program. Okay, it's a 3-year.
So this is an entry level, pretty much.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And was this in like the 1970s?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, actually, this was 1966.
Okay.
I started at Pratt because I got discharged in March of '66, and I think I started there in June of '66.
Okay.
Okay. So, like I say, 3-year apprenticeship program, worked there for a couple of years, transferred over to the research center, and even went back for a short while to Pratt to teach the program I had graduated from. That's when I started seriously on my education, going to school nights at Western New England, because they paid for it. Okay, and that was very nice. That was one of the things they, at that time, they did was they paid for your education, even if it didn't have anything to do with your job.
Right.
You sound familiar with that.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, I started with a big company, entry level job, and then went to night school. Yeah, I started with working with IBM.
Oh yes,
for IBM.
Yeah,
in the computer field.
Yeah,
back when computers were hidden away. You know.
Well, that's one of the biggest things we started with at the research center was computers. I think the biggest one we had the original one we had was a big UNIVAC. Okay. But
actually, that's the first one I started on. Before I was with IBM, I started working with the UNIVAC machine.
With the punch cards and everything like that.
And, big ka-chunk.
Big magnetic tape.
The big magnetic tape. That sort of thing. Yeah. So you went to night school then?
Yes, I went to Western New England and got a degree there in engineering and management. Okay. So, but that was partly because they paid for it, but partly because my wife encouraged me and gave me the time to do that. So, so yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. When you mentioned computers, one of the things I thought about was when personal computers were coming into vogue. The big clunky monitor with the big tower and all that. The company decided that they were going to train all of their senior executives on computers. So as part of my job in procurement, it was my job to set up a classroom, get the computers in there, and bring these people in for training. It was like 4.5 days of training on how to work a computer. And at the end of 4.5 days, we'd pack up the computer and the monitor and the printer and load it into their cars, and off they went back to wherever they came from. And I was thinking to myself, I said, once we get all of these executives trained, and once we get their executive assistants set up with computers, this is really going to calm down.
Yeah.
Right. So, no, that didn't happen. That did not happen. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it was a very interesting place to work. It was very interesting.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else? I know you've got a few notes
No,
there. Did
well,
we cover everything
I
that
covered
you
just
thought was
about
important?
everything there. That my military, UTC, planning for retirement, cooking for large groups.
So is there anything big coming up in the future that you're planning to do, or any of the organizations that you're involved in or planning that you're...
We're trying very hard to find my replacement. I was told a long time ago, this is, when you get promoted to a new position, one of the first things you've got to do is start training your replacement. Okay?
Okay.
Well, it's not that I'm planning to go anywhere, but I'm just about to turn 81. Okay?
Wow.
And what happens when you get a little older is things start not to work the way they used to. Okay? So I'm trying very hard to find someone who can take on some of the things I've been doing. And one of the things that you really need when you've got someplace like St. Michael's with their kitchen and whatnot is you need someone who is ServSafe certified.
Right.
Okay?
I've heard of that.
Okay,
Yep.
well, I got ServSafe certified back about 8 or 9 years ago when it was required. And because of that, I get involved with everything that's cooked up there, just about, unless we bring in a caterer. And it's been hard to find someone to take that on. Because I know that I love to do it, but with the age and the things that come with it,
Sure.
I'm finding I just can't spend as much time
Sure.
on my feet. And the drive-through dinners, which I love to do, okay? It's generally about 4 hours of prep the day before, and then 4 to 6 hours the day of. And there comes a time when you say, I
I know what you're
gotta
talking
pass this
about.
mantle on to somebody.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So as far as getting certified, is there a lot involved in that? Is there
well, is there a lot? It's a study course. Okay, the way I originally did it, and you still can, is you take a 1-day course, and it's a like 6 or 8 hour day of the course, and you take an exam.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
If you feel that you can do it, there is a book that you can order, do the study on yourself, and then go in and just take a proctored exam.
Okay.
And the last time I took the exam was in East Hampton. There's a lady out there who proctors the exams, and that's it. You're
it.
certified for 5 years. And
So it's just a matter of finding someone who's is interested and
is interested and willing to spend the time. Yeah.
spend the time. And,
So-
yeah.
Yeah. So that's that's the story of my life.
So, just to kind of get into the weeds a little bit, Tony, why is it that you have difficulty in doing small meals, but you love to do the big stuff?
I can only say it's the interaction with the people.
Okay,
Okay, it's the.
I get that.
I like people.
Yeah.
I like people, and I like young people. They make me feel good. Okay, so it's the idea of working with the young people. John Fitzpatrick. Okay, my big failing is names. I'm sorry, I just can't remember.
Yeah.
But the youth group, the first group of what we call the TNL group, Tuesday Night Live.
Right.
We're just spectacular. Okay, and I loved working with him every chance I got. I just liked to be around him, just listening to him.
Yeah.
Okay, it made me feel young.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
No, I can identify with that.
Yeah.
I find it energizing to
Yes.
be around the young people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I have always liked to be around people. Okay? As I said, even when I was working, I liked the people. Not so much the job, but I loved the people and interesting people, and talk to them, and find out where they're from and how they got there and what they do.
So when's the next drive-through?
I honestly don't know.
Coming up in
It will probably be in the fall. It'll probably be in the fall.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah.
There will be a golf tournament in the fall. We live in hope, and also probably starting in September, we'll start the pasta suppers back up again.
Ooh,
Okay,
good.
But tomorrow is Friends of the Homeless for me. We have a team leader there, and the lady will be away. She's leaving on vacation this afternoon. So I'm going to stand in for her and lead that team back at Friends of the Homeless.
Wow.
So we'll probably
Talk about that. What is that?
Friends of the Homeless is a residence for homeless people on Worthington Street in Springfield.
Okay.
They prepare 3 meals a day there every day because they have residents. But it is not, the meals are not exclusive to the residents. So anyone who needs a meal, wants a meal, can come in and have a meal. We have a team of people who go down there and prepare a meatloaf dinner. Okay, first thing we do when we get there, we bake brownies because we're going to have dessert. Okay, we mix them up, get them in the oven, and then we start mixing the meatloaf and all that. The brownies will come out of the oven. We'll put the meatloaf in, and we'll do mashed potatoes and a vegetable. Get that all warmed up, and we'll have maybe half an hour, 45 minutes of slack time while the ovens do their thing. And then it's start to get ready to serve the meals. Cut the brownies, plate them.
Wow.
Same thing with the rest of the meal. And we'll have 5 or 6 people down there to serve the meal. Okay.
So do you look for volunteers, or you are covered? You've got volunteers through the church.
We always look for volunteers because there's always a situation like we have this week in which probably half of our volunteers are away on vacation.
Ah, okay.
Summertime is hard as far as getting, but we work through.
So if someone was interested in volunteering, they'd get in touch with Rose, I guess.
They could get in touch with Rose or get in touch with the parish office.
The parish office.
Parish
That would be
office,
better.
Maria
Okay.
Murphy.
Okay.
Yeah, just let her in.
Because you don't know. Somebody listening to this might
Yeah.
say, hey, that sounds great. I'd
Yeah.
love to do it.
Yeah, in that line, we do Friends of the Homeless on a Saturday at noontime, and we do the loaves and fishes on a Friday evening meal. So we serve at 5 o'clock.
Wonderful.
That's a little more challenging because a lot of people who want to volunteer are working, and they can't get there, say, for 3 o'clock in the afternoon to help prepare the meal.
Sure.
But that's why we started the Saturday meal, is for those people there. So either one of those work.
Well, I'm getting hungry.
I didn't bring any brownies.
Well, this has been great, Tony.
Okay.
It's really been wonderful meeting you and talking. And this is
It's been good talking to you. I like to talk to people, as I said.
Good.
And I hope that someone who listens to this might step up and volunteer or
there we go.
decide to do something, even whether it's a soup kitchen or something else. My comment is, there is so many volunteer opportunities out there. Anybody who's retired and tells me they're bored, they're not trying.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah. That wraps up another episode of Stories from the View. We'd like to thank Tony Markowski for being here today. The Stories from the View podcast is available on the LCAT 01028 channel on YouTube, and it's also now on Spotify. If you have a story you'd like to share on the program, contact the Pleasant View Senior Center Director, Aaron Kobler, by stopping by the Pleasant View Senior Center, or you can call Aaron 413-525-5436, extension 1401. You can send Aaron an email at aaron.kobler@eastlongmeadowma.gov. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Stories from the View.